There we go. We're back. Alrighty. Let's get back on track. Welcome to the deep dive into Return of the Jedi here on Darth Vader Unlimited. I'm so glad to be able to come on here. And wait a minute. I hope this doesn't say private. I had a half an hour to make sure everything was correct. And it all fell down. Darth Vader Unlimited live stream. The first of the new year. There we go. So the chat is going. And again, it is a pleasure always to do these. This is the first live stream of the year. So I know I'm about at the end of the month of January. Let's see if we can fix this camera a little bit. There we go. That's better. So, as you can tell from the description, we're going to do the deep dive into Return of the Jedi. As you can see, I have on the Darth Vader costume that I got for Halloween from one of those pop-up Halloween shops called like Halloween Town or whatever it's called. But leave a like, leave a heart, chat. Let's interact. Now, my voice is a little scratchy, so maybe I can't do a very good Darth Vader impersonation, but I will do my best. Okay? So, again, we're going to do a deep dive into Return of the Jedi. We're going to discuss the Bad Batch, the trailer, the official trailer for the final season. I uploaded that today, a few hours ago, so hopefully you guys will go and check that out. All right? And you can leave a comment as to what you thought of my review, or just leave a comment about the trailer itself. All right? And we're also going to discuss upcoming Lucasfilm Star Wars movies news. Now, there's been a lot of talk. Actually, let's start with that. Okay, there's been a lot of talk about what the future of Star Wars movies is going to be under Disney and Lucasfilm, under the presidency of Kathleen Kennedy, who's really not been a fan favorite of Star Wars fans. And I'll even go back as far as perhaps the inception of The Force Awakens. I think that's when people started looking at Disney like, you know what I mean? Because the sequel trilogy is really what made everything go haywire, off track. All right. The Force Awakens, there was a lot of hype about this movie. This was something that people were really, let me be honest, this is something that people were really looking more forward to than the prequel trilogy, because us OG trilogy fans, and I'm a fan of the originals and the prequels, but before the prequels came out, all of us wanted to know what was the fate of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Lando Calrissian, Chewbacca, C-3PO, and R2-D2, and the rest of the galaxy after the fall of the Empire. That's what we really wanted the next trilogy, excuse me, to be about. We didn't really ask for an Anakin Skywalker or young Obi-Wan Kenobi trilogy. Because everybody's saying, oh, yeah, let's do the heir to the Empire, okay? So then when the prequel trilogy came out, it's almost like, okay. You know what I mean? Because we really wanted to know what was going on with Luke. We wanted to know how his story was progressing. Now, George Lucas did say that his story was over, though. Okay? Because after the fall of the Empire, he said, that's it. Okay? And it's his story to tell, so we got the prequel trilogy. All right? And the prequel trilogy was not met with the same love and the same adoration as the original trilogy. Okay? And since I'm going down this rabbit trail, let's go into it. All right? What were some drawbacks that original trilogy fans had with the prequel trilogy? I'm going to say the tone. Now, I didn't have a problem with Jar Jar Binks. I mean, everybody's acting like Ahmed Best torpedoed the entire franchise or the entire movie. He did not. Okay, he was a little stupid. All right, And Star Wars is not used to that kind of slapstick, Three Stooges humor. It's like we want the giant space battles, we want these epic lightsaber duels, and we got one of the best duels ever in Duel of the Fates with Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. You talk about elation with the duel, okay? The issue and the pod race was spectacularly done. Those two instances do not carry a movie. Okay, a movie consists of a first act, a second act, and a third act, and I think the pod race is around the second act, and obviously the Duel of Fates is in the third act. So we have two momentous moments, momentous Star Wars moments, kind of in between the second and third act, and of course the last one in the third act. So from the first act to the second act, we're like, okay, what's going on here? Because even when I was in the theaters, I was like, there's something off about the tone of the Phantom Menace. I was like, and then the background on Anakin Skywalker. It's like, wait a minute. So Anakin's supposed to be this messianic character all of a sudden? It's like, we want to know about Darth Vader. I don't really think we were as invested into the backstory of Anakin Skywalker. I think we wanted a brief synopsis. We want to see, okay, he's a great Jedi. Maybe he has a great battle or two. We want to know how he turns to the, excuse me, my voice cracked. We want to know how he turned to the dark side, Anakin. And then we want to see him in the suit as Vader. Because I will venture to say this. We really wanted a Nick Gillard, who did the choreography for the lightsaber duels. We wanted to see a Darth Vader lightsaber duel with the Nick Gillard choreography in the suit. Okay. Now the battle, and I'm kind of jumping back and forth. The battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin Vader, before he became Armored Vader, is spectacular. There's a lot of scenery. There's a lot of things going on. It's by a lava bed. There's a big stanchion that they're on. The stanchion falls into the lava. They're jumping and swinging and doing all this. There's a lot of action in this duel. But we original trilogy fans, we really wanted a really invested in highly choreographed Darth Vader duel in the suit and the armor. The way we saw Darth Maul done in the Phantom Menace, it's like, all right, we can't wait to see Vader in the suit duel it out. But we never got that. We got about 3 minutes of Vader in the armor. And I really don't think that's what original trilogy fans wanted. We did not want the 5 minute, well, not even 5 minutes of Vader in the suit and the armor with the James Earl Jones voice and the breathing and all the cool amenities. And even the suit was different. Okay? Let me nitpick here. As soon as I saw the suit, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, something is up with this suit. You know what I mean? Okay. Now again, I'm somebody that notices these kinds of things, but it's like the brim is too wide. It's like the shoulder armor is too pronounced. It's like, as far as continuity goes, this doesn't tell the story of A New Hope Vader, which is the first appearance of Vader that we get. Because the New Hope Vader is battle damaged. Like, there's the famous C scar on the actual mask. It's kind of like this, where this inner robe is over the armor. And it's not as clean. Now, since it's fresh out of the factory, when he was installed into the armor, it's supposed to look clean. But it doesn't even look like the same armor. It's like, again, it's wider. It's like a whole new suit. All right. So again, that's a nitpick. I'm not saying that's what's wrong with the movie. All right. But I'm saying we really wanted to see how he turned to the dark side. And I don't even know if we really wanted to see that as much as we wanted to see the furthering adventures of Luke and Han and Leia. So again, the prequel trilogy, it didn't really give us what original trilogy fans really wanted. We really wanted to see the heir to the Empire and the continuation of Luke Skywalker and the rebellion turned into the Galactic Republic again. That's what we really wanted. So I said all that just to say this. So by the time the sequel trilogy comes out, we're told we're getting the furtherance of Luke, Han, Leia, and the Millennium Falcon crew. It's like, okay, cool. And of course, we're introduced to new characters. All right, in The Force Awakens. So by the time The Force Awakens comes out, it starts off with Luke Skywalker has vanished, and we're like, what? What? We want to see Luke. You know what I mean? In that high pitched voice. No, I'm playing. It's like, what do you mean Luke Skywalker vanished? Then it's like, there's a map to Sky. I was like, wait, so is it? So we're starting off the sequel trilogy, the adventures of this crew after Return of the Jedi, and we're looking for Luke. Why? Why are we looking for Luke? We want to know what's going on with Luke. Then we discover that Han Solo lost the Millennium Falcon. He and Chewbacca are in this ship that we don't recognize, while the new characters are in the iconic ship that we all love and recognize, the Millennium Falcon. And it's like, wait, so these new characters are flying around in this iconic ship, and Harrison Ford's Han Solo and Peter Mayhew's Chewbacca board the ship, and that's when we get that great thing from the trailer where he comes and goes, Chewie, we're home. People celebrated when Harrison Ford delivered those lines. But in the movie, when we saw how the trajectory of The Force Awakens was going, we were like, it wasn't that many cheers when he came on board, the gun. It's like, so this is where they say the line from the trailer. And we're like, Han Solo went back to smuggling. So basically, Han Solo did not go forward after Return of the Jedi, according to The Force Awakens. It's like, why are you smuggling again? Like, are you kidding me? So he's, I forgot the name of the people that boarded, because they were looking for Han Solo in his ship. They weren't looking for him in the Millennium Falcon, but they were looking for the ship that he and Chewbacca, I think it was a freighter. So it's just weird, like the way the sequel trilogy just handled these characters that we really wanted to see. You know what I mean? Then it's like Leia's in charge of the Resistance again, and it's a reset. That's why the sequel trilogy is just, bleh. That's why The Force Awakens was just like, what? We're doing this? You know what I mean? So I think that's the issue that original trilogy fans, harkening back, okay, to the prequel trilogy, we really wanted to see the furtherance of Luke and crew. And we didn't get that. All right? So, and for some reason people were making, and again, I'm talking about an overall view of why original trilogy fans aren't as endearing, aren't as enamored with the prequel trilogy. I like the prequel trilogy, but I'm saying the sort of, like, the interference. It's like the reason why original trilogy fans don't really love the prequel trilogy as much. The stories of each movie in the prequel trilogies are like overly convoluted. It's like most Star Wars movies, well, the original trilogy Star Wars movies didn't really have plots. It's like it's a group of freedom fighters fighting against an oppressive regime. That's the original trilogy. Those are basically the plots of every movie. Of course, there were subplots. The subplot of Empire Strikes Back. Darth Vader is trying to capture Luke Skywalker and turn him to the dark side. That's the subplot of The Empire Strikes Back. In Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker has to face Darth Vader once again, and he's trying to turn Vader to the light side. That's the subplot of Return of the Jedi. In the prequel trilogies, the plots were just so many moving parts that just was, I'm like, what is going on here? Think about it. The opening crawl of the Phantom Menace. The peace-loving planet of Naboo is blockaded by the Trade Federation because of the taxation of trade routes. Why? Why was Naboo being blockaded? We never found out. All we knew is that an evil guy in a hood and a hologram was the power behind this Trade Federation. But we never knew why. It's like, then when she went to the Senate or whatever, she's like, it's engulfed us in the oppression of the Trade Federation armor. And then somebody from the Trade Federation that says, this is an outrage. How could you say this? I'm like this, okay, if you're going to make it this convoluted with politics, how come the people that were sending goods to Naboo didn't come forth and go, hey, we haven't been paid? Wouldn't that make more sense? It's like, hey, we want to say something. We sent goods to Naboo, but because it's blockaded, we didn't get paid for it. So they should have been arguing as much as Padme Amidala. or people receiving goods from Naboo should have said, hey, we paid for goods from Naboo. We didn't get paid. So it shouldn't have just been her saying, when Padme finally made it to the Senate on Coruscant. It should have been a whole crowd of people. Hey, we didn't get our goods from Naboo. So we never understand in the Phantom Menace why this blockade is legal. Why? Was Naboo behind on payments? It just doesn't make sense. The story is just too convoluted. And then we see how, the Jedi Order is, it's like Congress. It's like you're telling me that this body, the Jedi Order, that Obi-Wan Kenobi through Alec Guinness told us about, the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic, is basically a round table of older Jedi talking? Really? Like, that's how George wrote the Jedi? Like, nobody even likes the Jedi now because of how they're portrayed in the prequels. It's like when I go on these like OG, original trilogy Star Wars sites. It's like, well, how the Jedi Council was a stiff bunch of. I'm like, that's not how they were perceived in the original trilogy. We were thinking that the Jedi were the saviors of the galaxy. They're the guardians of peace and justice. But then when we see it in action, we're like, boo! Like all this hype about Mace Windu being in the movie as a Jedi, and he's skeptical about everything. It's like, why? It just does not. It baffles me. It baffles me. When Qui-Gon Jinn said he was confronted by a mysterious warrior that was a Sith, they start debating instead of sending aid. Isn't that dumb? It's like, I believe he was a Sith. I don't think the Sith could have come back without his nose. Really? This is really what the Jedi are? This is what Luke Skywalker always wanted to be? No. That new garbage Jedi Council was a last-second rewrite for the movie. That's what I think. I don't think they were ever envisioned as this government. And then it says, when Leia sends the message to Obi-Wan through R2, she said, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars. A senator? And then we find out that they're like lapdogs for the Senate. I'm like, boo. This iteration of the Jedi sucks. They suck. I'm sorry, they do. They suck. Yoda, this mysterious character from The Empire Strikes Back, this powerful character who I think probably demonstrated the most powerful Force event that we've ever seen, perhaps, when levitating a lifeless X-Wing and guiding it through out of a swamp and landing it right in front of Luke. That might be the most powerful exertion we've ever seen in the Force. If I'm wrong, just put it in the chat what you think it was. But then he's an old, wrinkled guy in a chair that doesn't do anything in the movie. It's like, really? Yoda and all these Jedi Masters send Qui-Gon and Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi back to Naboo to draw out this attacker. Why? Why are we sending Qui-Gon on a fact-finding mission with somebody that could be a Sith? Isn't that dumb? Yeah, let's learn the identity. He might kill Qui-Gon, and guess what? He killed him. And then we want to celebrate Obi-Wan. Oh, now you're a Jedi Knight. This was stupid to me. I'm sorry, that was stupid. These aren't guardians. These are politicians of peace and justice. So the Jedi are written horribly. Then okay, listen to this. In Attack of the Clones, all right? I'm keeping the same energy, all right? So if anybody thinks I'm prequel hating, I'm not. I'm just keeping the same energy for a bad story, all right? That's just my opinion. I just think the plot points of the prequel trilogy were just overly convoluted and bad. All right. With the knowledge, okay, that Obi-Wan Kenobi gave to, I think, Yoda and Mace Windu, who were sitting in that, like, meditation room, where he's broadcasting, it's like freezing, on Camino, saying, did the Jedi Council authorize the creation of army? And Mace Windu's emphatically like, no, we did not. And Yoda's like, because they said the template for the clones was a Mandalorian bounty hunter named Jango Fett, the one that Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi were chasing through the skyways of Coruscant, who clearly has something to do with the assassination attempt on a senator in Padme Amidala. So this is a big deal, okay? A member of the Galactic Senate was nearly assassinated twice on the landing platform at the beginning of the movie and in her personal council, her residential chambers on Coruscant. This is a big deal. So, what happens? Okay, first of all, with this knowledge, and Yoda says, "Bring him here." I'm talking about Jango Fett, and we'll question him. Okay, so we know that some sneakiness is going on. All right, it's not authorized by the Jedi Council. An army has been created. So when Palpatine manipulates Jar Jar Binks for the entire audience to see that the Jedi can't see, I hope I remember this point, but I probably won't. So Palpatine manipulates Jar Jar right in front of the entire the top brass of the Jedi Council. Manipulates Jar Jar, and it's obvious to us as the audience. So I don't know why these Force sensitive guys can't pick up on that. They have the Force. When Jar Jar recommends that Chancellor Palpatine be elected emergency powers to consolidate power, and Palpatine says, "My first act with this newfound authority is to create a grand army of the Republic to counter the increasing threats of the Separatists." Yoda and Mace Windu, who are watching this, know that it was done under false auspices of the Jedi Council and the Jedi Order. So when Yoda goes to Kamino, why didn't he question everybody? What does he do within the movie? He shows up with the army. So instead of sending Yoda, and I know most of the Jedi had to go to Geonosis to save Obi-Wan. So why didn't Yoda do his investigation then and there with these Kaminoans and look into who created the army, and find out, like, just the very essence of who these clones were? Because it turns out they had chips in their head that made them Death Soldiers in Revenge of the Sith. Yoda was right there, and he said, "Hey, let's go. We need you guys." Was that not stupid of Yoda? Come on now. Come on. Nerfing Yoda, making him an idiot. Dumb. Convoluted. Stupid. And the whole story, Cypher Diaz. What was the point of the man named Cypher Diaz? As I said before, it would have made so much more sense if Jango Fett had said, no, if Lama Su had said, "Oh, Qui-Gon Jinn." Then we immediately would have had that emotional touchstone. Like, wait a minute. They're saying Qui-Gon Jinn did that. So immediately there's an emotional investment from the audience, because we know Qui-Gon wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? So then when Count Dooku has Obi-Wan, in vines or whatever those things are, and Geonosis is like spinning for some reason, I guess to keep the blood circulating. When he says, "Qui-Gon Jinn always spoke very highly of you. I wish he was still here. I could use his help right now." Then that scene would have been that much more heavier. There would have been that much more gravitas. Because now that talk would have made sense. Count Dooku could have said, "Well, you know what he did about the clone army," and then Obi-Wan could say he would have never done this, and then it would have been so much better. And it's not fair for me to write somebody else's story, so I'm just saying that right now. It's not fair for me to say that the story should have gone this way. I just think the story went in a dumb direction. I think it did. And again, this point is about how overly convoluted the plots are to each prequel movie. Okay, so it's not me just slicing and dicing the prequels. I'm talking about specifically the story points and issues that original trilogy fans have with the prequels. Okay, the convoluted stories. Let's go to Revenge of the Sith. I already did Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. Now we're talking about what's convoluted about the story of Revenge of the Sith. Not much. All right, I'll be honest. There's not much, because we're concluding the Clone Wars and we're showing the fall of Anakin Skywalker to the dark side. Okay. To me, what's convoluted is the story behind why he turned to the dark side. Palpatine says, I mean, when they're in the opera, the box, whatever, he excuses Sly Moore and I think Masa Meda and other people. And he says he could even stop people. First of all, he tells a Sith tale to Anakin, and Anakin doesn't pick up on this at all. The first thing would have been, wait, how do you know about the Sith stuff? How do you know specifically who Darth Plagueis is? How do you know who was apprentice? Who he should have said who was his apprentice? Who's the apprentice of Darth Plagueis? Maybe I'm thinking too much. Maybe I'm reaching. That is curious. And as inquisitive as young Anakin as a kid, played by Jake Lord, was, why wouldn't he ask these questions now when he's older and wiser? Anyway, so the Sith tale goes without Anakin's antenna going up. Like, wait, how do you know about this? Who told you about this? Okay, he says he could even stop those that he cared about from dying. Okay, so listen to this. Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, who desired above everything else to be Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker. Here's this story. The sworn enemy of the Jedi over the millennia, the Sith. He saw Darth Maul. Remember, he fought Count Dooku, so he knows the Sith are back in force. Okay? Not back and forth, but back in force. They're powerful again. He doesn't immediately say, wait, when did the Sith care about anything but power? Really? What Sith does he know that cares about people? And again, it's the layers of just like convolution. It's like, why wouldn't he say Sith don't care about people? Like, why wasn't there more pushback to this story? There's no way on earth this story should have got off without Anakin Skywalker trying to arrest Palpatine right there in the box. I'd immediately go back to Yoda like, yo, Palpatine just told me a story. Have you ever heard of Darth Plagueis? And maybe Yoda knew who Darth Plagueis was. I don't know. And let's go back to Yoda. Okay. He's in the meditation chamber while Anakin is slaughtering the Sith. I mean, not the Sith, slaughtering the Sand people. And he's like, you can see the consternation on his face. Like, and Mace Windu comes in. He doesn't immediately just bother Yoda. You know, he sees Yoda going through something. And when Yoda looks up with like tears in his eyes, he's like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "Pain." Young Skywalker's in terrible, like he's like groaning, he's like travailing, terrible pain. And Yoda never asked him about it. He never talked to Anakin about, Anakin, what's going on? What happened, son? You know, because when Yoda's like limping, after Dooku escapes. Why wasn't there more care for Anakin? Or I'll be fair. Maybe there was a conversation that just wasn't aired, and that's why Anakin was regularly coming to Yoda, in the meditation chambers. So maybe that's it. Maybe they did have that talk. But we don't see that on camera, though. We don't see that on screen. We do see him talking to Anakin, so maybe they had these regular sessions. So, okay. So we'll moot that point if that's the reason why he and Anakin are talking in Revenge of the Sith. Okay. But the convolution of just, like, I don't think us original trilogy fans bought his turn to the dark side. Anakin's, because like, you're a Jedi Master. I mean, well, you're on the precipice of being a Jedi Master. Obi-Wan Kenobi told him. He said, Anakin, just be patient. You'll be there in no time. So he's probably more powerful than a lot of the Jedi Masters. I don't know. Maybe it's his ideology and his zealotry that people are like, all right, chill. And he said his friendship with Palpatine was what was like forbidding him from being on the council. Maybe. I don't know. So you can tell Anakin is just as powerful as a lot of the Jedi Masters, okay? So it's like, why would you believe the story that somebody could stop people from dying? As many people as you have killed, as in the Clone Wars as a general, why would you buy this? Like, and don't tell me Anakin like took leave of his senses. Like, oh, he's insane now. We already know he's a psychopath. All right, we saw what he did to the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders. We know he's a psycho. But it's like, why? As soon as I heard that in the theaters, I was like, I was kind of like uncomfortable in my seat. I'm like, he's buying this? He's buying it. That's from Harley Quinn in the animated series. But anyway, I was disturbed in the theaters. Like when I first saw this, I was like, baloney. Because remember, Anakin did say that to Padme. He said, he's working on something. I'll become the most powerful Jedi ever. I promise you. I'll even learn to stop people from dying. And he's like mad with rage and guilt. So I can forgive him for saying that. Because he's just out of his mind right now. You know what I mean? But that just shouldn't have been his like regular mindset from then on. I'm just crazy with rage and guilt. And maybe some people buy that. I don't. All right. So, and you can see like in his interactions with Obi-Wan, he's like smiling, he's like laughing. So that's not his regular mindset of just being a guilt-ridden, paranoid maniac because of his interactions with people, his interactions with Padme. He's like warm. He's friendly. He's not isolated. He's not cold. They're not asking him what's wrong with him in the beginning of the movie. They're saying that when he displays behavior that is not commensurate with who he is regularly. All right. So from that conversation, I'm like, I can't believe this. He's going to turn to the dark side to learn a power that no one knows of saving people from dying. Like I don't think any child would buy that, but he's doing it. And again, these convoluted stories, which I just kind of outlined, which wasn't a part of the description, but I'm glad you guys have stuck around to hear it from me. This is just my opinion about things. That's where the original trilogy fans are lost from the prequels. The convoluted stories, the inconsistencies in the script, and the treatment of turning Anakin Skywalker into Darth Vader, into the armored Darth Vader. All right. And then, just my last point. By the time Anakin realizes that Palpatine is evil or a Sith, you, the audience, are already like, you're just figuring this out? Bad writing. I'm sorry. It's bad writing. Like, Palpatine literally had to tape one of those adhesive name tags that says, "Hi, I'm a Sith," for him to say, "You're the Sith Lord." And by the time he says that, there's nothing to it, because you're already like, this guy's just now figuring this out. You just figured that out, and you have the Force? So, again, those are just issues that I think original trilogy fans have with the prequel trilogies. Okay, that's why we don't love them as much as the original trilogies. Okay, I recently put something on TikTok, and I said, like, this is what original trilogy Star Wars fans don't like about the sequel trilogies. And somebody chimed in, hey, this is what we don't like about the prequels. And I said, okay, I'm not going to go there. All right. But to extend an olive branch between the different generations of Star Wars trilogy fans, that's why I sort of went on that rabbit trail talking about what we don't like about the prequels. Okay? I could talk about what we don't like about the sequels. We'll save that for another time. Because remember, I don't want to isolate sequel trilogy fans. I don't want multiple Star Wars fan bases. Oh, we only like the prequels. Oh, we only like the originals. Only like the sequels. Can we bring us all together and be a unified community? I mean, if you see something garbage, don't act like it's not garbage. And that's the only reason why I bring up these points. It's like, we can't put all of our hate and all of our disdain into just the sequel trilogy when there are problems with the original trilogy and there are problems with the prequel trilogy. All right? So, let's move on to the Bad Batch. Okay? The trailer for season 3, which will be the final season of Bad Batch, aired earlier this week. I put out a review on Darth Vader Unlimited. I hope you guys check it out. Thumb up the video, share it. Okay, it's no profanity, so your kids can watch it. Okay, this is basically a family channel. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really use profanity in general. So watch these videos with your kids or grandchildren. All right. Boy, I'm really reaching, aren't I? Hey, make your children fans of the channel. But anyway, make them fans of Star Wars. Okay. So highlights from the trailer. We see, looks like the Emperor is going to have a little more than just a cameo, which I think is great. Okay, because I think the prequels should have been more about the Emperor than about Anakin. But anyway, so we see Palpatine walking, I think, down a long corridor, or maybe he was like outside or something, and he had 2 guards with him. Okay, so I think there's gonna be a little more action from Palpatine, a little more movement. You know, because basically all he did was just go in season 2 when he addressed the Senate, which is, I mean, a terrific scene. But that's all we got of Palpatine in the Bad Batch season 2. But Ian McDermott's voice was just awesome. Especially when he says, "The Imperial Stormtrooper." I just love Ian McDermott's voice. So hopefully we get a little more out of the Emperor. You know what I mean? I definitely want to see that. And IGN, here's a force choke for you. Why am I force choking IGN? So glad you asked. Because they put a thumbnail of a surprise character in the Bad Batch. So when I'm looking through, when I see that the trailer's out, I say, okay, let me select one. Then I see the character. I'm like, why would you put that in a thumbnail? Anyway. So Asajj Ventress makes her return in the final season of the Bad Batch. Who is Asajj Ventress? So glad you asked. Asajj Ventress was I want to say the pupil. She was being molded to become the apprentice of Count Dooku in the Clone Wars. Not just George Lucas's computer-generated Clone Wars, but also Genndy Tartakovsky's the cartoon Clone Wars. She's the bald-headed sort of Sith assassin. Like the does she have tattoos or are they just veins? But she has like purplish skin. She's a dynamic looking character, very powerful. I think she's held her own in lightsaber duels against like Luminara, Unduli, Ahsoka. Her interactions with Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars are great stuff. I think she's fought Anakin a few times as well. But she's powerful. She became so powerful. Okay, spoiler. She became so powerful that Darth Sidious contacted Count Dooku and said, "Kill her, because she's getting too strong." And Count Dooku had a little bit of pushback. He's like, "My master, like jelly bean that jumps. You look a bit like Kiyoshi." Here's a force choke for you, buddy. He said it like Kiyoshi. He's a Jedi. No, but anyway, so you didn't even have to put just joking. It's all good here. Okay, all right. But as I was saying, so Asajj Ventress is very powerful. You know what I mean? All good, Jelly Bean. All good. All right. So in this iteration in the Bad Batch, well, as I was saying, she was becoming so powerful that Darth Sidious contacted Dooku and said, "You have to kill her." All right. So reluctantly, Count Dooku had to part ways with Asajj Ventress, and we really don't know what happened to Ventress after that. I know she became like a bounty hunter. She teamed up. She actually saved Obi-Wan Kenobi from being slaughtered by Darth Maul and Savage Opress. Okay, and she kind of became a fringe character. Trying to become a bounty hunter and all this other good stuff. And in the books, I think she got killed. If I remember correctly, they said that Count Dooku was about to like kill somebody with force lightning, and I think they said Asajj Ventress jumped in the path of the lightning and that killed her, which I can buy. It's electricity, so you be electrocuted. You should probably die if you're electrocuted. Okay. So that's all I knew about Asajj Ventress, excuse me. So when I saw her appear in the trailer, I was like, she's back. And for some reason, she had hair. I'm like, why? Why do you have hair? It's like blonde hair, like a bleached blonde Sith assassin. I don't like the hair, but I still like the character. So I can't wait to see how she kind of fits into this Bad Batch sort of prequel era of the Bad Batch. She has a yellow lightsaber. She only had one. I was expecting her to have the two lightsabers with the curved hilts like Count Dooku has, but oh well. I guess I can't have everything I want. And we also see Omega has been captured for a while. Have you watched it? So, yes, I have. I have. What were your thoughts on the show, Jelly Bean? The Ahsoka show. Let's see. I graded it. No point in typing. I'll just tell you. I gave it about a C because the last two episodes almost torpedoed the whole series. And my favorite episode was actually Far, Far Away. I think that was episode 6. That's when we were introduced to Grand Admiral Thrawn, and that's when the Chimera arrives on Paradiso. Was that the name of it? The planet in that other galaxy where the Night Sisters were from. And I really like Sabine's interaction with that big wolf. Like that really felt like Star Wars to me. It's like people talking to a lot of times like the pilots talk to the ships, even though the ships don't respond. And it like when she was talking to that creature after she said it abandoned her and all that stuff. I knew a lot of people would say that Shadow Warrior. That's what. Let me just type that in the chat for you. Shadow Warrior. I knew that was gonna be a fan favorite one because of Anakin. You know what I mean? But I'll say this, Jelly Bean, and then I'll get back to the Bad Batch. I didn't really like the way they changed. I didn't like the way they changed Sabine Wren. Now, if Sabine Wren was always a Jedi apprentice in Star Wars Rebels, I'd have had no problems with this series. If anything, if she was always a Jedi apprentice that was force sensitive, when she like demonstrated that power in the finale, I was like, oh yay, about time. But for them to just change her whole story up, I didn't like that at all. Okay. All right, so the Bad Batch, we see that Omega has been captured for some time. We don't see any Tarkin. We saw Tarkin in season 2 of the Bad Batch. But to me, the highlights were the Emperor and Asajj Ventress. And the Bad Batch looks like there's nothing really changed with them. It looks like the Empire's gunning for them. We see the gunships, coming at them while they're in that juggernaut. We see Rex has returned. But I think this is going to be a fantastic series. This final season, I think it's going to kind of put the cherry on top for the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch has been done spectacularly, art wise and visually wise. Some episodes are filler, in my opinion, but it's still a good series. And I think that this season 3 will really kind of cap it off. Now, if we're going to go dark, all right, because the Bad Batch does not appear in any Star Wars stuff, okay, original trilogy stuff or sequel trilogy stuff. If Vader would have come in and slaughtered the Bad, I'm pretty sure that won't happen. But if Vader were to come in and slaughter the Bad Batch, but the Bad Batch put up a good fight, that could be among some of the greatest stuff in Star Wars. Not just because it's Vader, because in my opinion, when Admiral Rampart destroys Topoka City, I think that's one of the best parts too. Especially when they do that sort of like they show different parts of the clone headquarters and like where they live, where they eat lunch, and all that other stuff. I thought that's one of the best sequences in Star Wars too, because of how much the clones mean to the prequel trilogy and all that other good stuff. Okay, so thank you so much for those thumbs up, whoever's doing it. Please feel free to join me in the chat, just like Jellybean that jumps has. Okay, and we can basically have a. I don't want to say face to face because obviously I can't see you, but yeah, this is again. I love Star Wars so much. So when Star Wars is done incorrectly, in my opinion, I don't hold back. All right, I do not hold back because you have to have a standard. You know what I mean? Like there has to be a measuring stick for something that changed movies. George Lucas's original trilogy, Star Wars, it changed movies forever. And the prequel trilogy did too, as far as action and digital technology goes. So if you're coming out with anything new, if you're coming out with a sequel trilogy, it has to hold up to the standards of the action of the prequels and the storytelling of the originals, in my opinion. All right. So we're going to transition into our deep dive into Return of the Jedi, the third movie of the original trilogy, the one that closes the book on the original trilogy films. As a child, Return of the Jedi was my favorite movie. It was my favorite movie. I would come home and either, I'm going to date myself here too, either third or fourth grade. I think it was third or fourth grade, okay? I would watch Return of the Jedi every day. You heard that Disney once changed holes. Jelly Bean, yes. And I've seen them slowly do that, trying to change George Lucas's Star Wars stories. And that's really highlighted with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. The fact that they would throw together a fight with these two pivotal characters, Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, they're going to fight. That was just egregious to me. Egregious. The duel. The fact that Vader would even see Obi-Wan again before the Death Star. It's like you're trying to take the A New Hope, where they met for the second time as enemies and the final time. You're trying to take all the steam out of that moment with this whole series. And there was talks about Ahsoka going into the world between worlds that we first saw in Rebels. We see in Shadow Warrior, okay? That's where she meets Anakin Skywalker. There was talk that she was going to change the entire backbone of Star Wars in that world between worlds. Thankfully, that didn't happen, but I think there's an Ahsoka season 2 coming, so that might change it too. Hopefully not, though, because we don't want to see the whole story change. Like, come on, that's just ridiculous and disrespectful. So let's get back to Return of the Jedi. I watched that movie every day when I came home from school. That was the first movie I ever memorized all the dialogue of. Return of the Jedi. Every word that's spoken, even the alien languages, I knew. I could recite. Okay, I probably don't remember as much now because I'm grown up and have responsibilities. No, it's cool. But yeah, Return of the Jedi was my favorite movie. It is still one of my favorite movies. Okay, I don't think it diminished with age. I don't think it's dated. The technology of Return of the Jedi holds up. Okay, I think the practical effects of Jabba the Hutt is still one of the best puppets in all of movie history. Yep, I'm gonna say it because it's practical, because it's real to the actors. Like the actors literally have to walk around Jabba. They don't have to walk around a place marker. Say, all right, the digital rendering of this massive creature is gonna be here. But the characters could see this puppet. They can interact with the puppet. The puppet has eyes, the remote control eyes. That's how they did Jabba the Hutt's eyes. There were 3 people inside the character. I mean, the puppet. one on the left hand, one on the right hand, and there was a little person who we previously would call a midget controlling the tail movements. So Jabba the Hutt was brought to life by actual puppeteers. So that's why I think Jabba the Hutt works so well. The sequence with Jabba the Hutt when I was young, that was my favorite part of the movie. And it's because Jabba the Hutt is just so massive. He's so like I've heard some commentators say that he's like a dragon. Dragons hoard gold. Some of them hoard maidens, and Princess Leia and Ula, the Twi'lek that he killed earlier. They sort of treat Jabba the Hutt like he's a dragon, because he hoards all this wealth, and he's the most powerful gangster in the Star Wars galaxy at that time. All right, so Jabba the Hutt was like my favorite sequence of Return of the Jedi when I was younger. So let's go into the deep dive, okay? And my deep dive is basically me just retelling the movie with some of my commentary, okay, without actually watching the movie in front of you guys. So the movie begins with one of my favorite sequences: Darth Vader arriving at the Death Star. We see the Lambda class shuttle, that's sort of the one with the three fins, the dorsal fin and the two on the side. It looks like kind of like a triangle, roughly. We see it like descend out of the Star Destroyer. We see like space travel. We see it arrive at the Death Star. We see that Darth Vader still had this gravitas. When the commander of the Death Star arrives, there's like this little moment where he like swallows or gulps because Darth Vader is coming. He's like, and that just lets you know that's just great storytelling. Even if you never saw Return of the Jedi or knew who Darth Vader, almost said Darth Star, combined Darth Vader and Death Star. Even if you never knew who Darth Vader was from the first two movies, from the commander's reaction, okay, this is a guy that's not to be trifled with. So then he descends down the ramp. Darth Vader has some terrific dialogue, which I'm not going to go into. But what you think about Rey movie, if you heard about it? The Rey Skywalker movie. I'm always optimistic about Star Wars. Star Wars just, unfortunately, just lets me down. Okay? Because every new movie that comes out, I'm like, all right, yay, let's see if we can get back on track. And then the burden of proof, Jellybean, is on Star Wars, on Disney Star Wars, to make me excited again. And they have not done it so far. So my excitement about the Rey movie is not there. I'm going to just be honest. I'm not excited about this Rey movie. I still want a Luke movie. Right. She's Palpatine, not Skywalker. Exactly. I don't want a Rey movie. I still want a Luke Skywalker Jedi Order movie. Like it was in the books. I want Luke to train this next era of Jedi, not Rey. Nobody taught Rey anything. How can she teach somebody else something? Think about that, Jellybean. How can you have a teacher that was never taught teaching someone else? It's like, what do you know? I know if I go like this with my hand and I really mean it, lightning might come out and destroy a ship. You're not teaching me anything. You're just telling me how it happened with you. You haven't taught me anything. You know what I mean, Jellybean? That rhyme. You know what I mean, Jellybean? Anyway, so I have no anticipation for this movie. Zero. Will I see it if it comes out in the theaters? I probably still will. Okay. Hey, how do you do the lightning trick? I don't know. I'm just getting. So again, I actually think Daisy Ridley is a very good actress too. All right. So this has nothing to do with Daisy Ridley. This has nothing to do with a female lead. Everybody keeps trying to make it about sex when it's not. Even though they're trying to force this kind of, hey, females are taking over Star Wars. It's like they were already powerful characters in Star Wars. So basically, you're going backwards, Disney, because we already had Leia, and I'm going to get back to the Return of the Jedi deep dive. We already had Leia, who was in charge of everybody. She's like, get this big walking carpet out of my way. Powerful. Sassy. She's confronting Darth Vader like, Darth Vader, only you can be. So the two most powerful characters in Star Wars, physically, Chewbacca and Darth Vader are nothing to Leia. She's like, only you could be so bold. And then when she's brought before Tarkin, Leia, Darth Vader's right behind her. She said, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. And then Darth Vader's pacing back and forth like her resistance to the mind probe is considerable. He's basically telling Tarkin she's too strong-willed to turn against the rebellion. Female character in the 70s. So George Lucas was way ahead of this Disney stuff. Where it's like, let's make like the Force is female. The Force was already female. It just wasn't exclusively female. So to come out and say the Force is female is stupid. It's stupid. Because Leia demonstrated the Force in Empire Strikes Back. She helped save Luke in 1980. So we don't need this retread of let's introduce female characters that have power and strength in Star Wars. We already had it, bozo. And then, sorry, I go down these tangents. I apologize. I go down these rabbit trails. Even after Alderaan is destroyed, Darth Vader, Tarkin is like befuddled. She lied. She lied to us. And Vader's like, I told you she would never consciously betray the rebellion. It's like, she's too strong. And then, like, she's treating Han Solo, who's there to rescue her. Luke comes in the stormtrooper armor. She says, she sits up like this, like, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? This is how you do female characters. Okay? You don't have her snatch the lightsaber from Obi-Wan and duel Darth Vader. She's powerful how she is. She's feminine. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful. She's shooting people. Stormtroopers, that is. She's telling other people what to do. This is how you do strong female characters. Return of the Jedi. Okay, Leia was the princess. Who was in charge of the rebellion? Mon Mothma, another female. George Lucas knows how to empower female characters in Star Wars. Don't give me this garbage that Star Wars needs to be shaped by a woman. It was shaped by a man in George Lucas, and he knew how to write women. Even in the prequel trilogy, Padme Amidala, this beautiful woman, she says, it's time to fight. She grabs her blaster. She's leading the charge. Padme is small. I think she was a teenager in the prequels. Okay, Phantom Menace. Darth Sidious even says, this is an unexpected move for her. It's too aggressive. Do you see how the big villains are treating female characters? They're not jokes. He's like Darth Sidious, whose face is always frowned up, is like, this is an unexpected move for her. It's too aggressive. He don't know what she's going to do. He says, Lord Maul. What did he say after that? I'm sorry. I don't remember. Is that Lord Maul? He said, be mindful, because he don't know what Padme is going to do. He said, be mindful. Let them make the first move. You want me to go into the Clone Wars? Well, I just talked about Asajj Ventress, who's a powerful, strong female character who dueled Anakin, who dueled Obi-Wan, who dueled Savage Opress and Darth Maul, who dueled Luminara, Ahsoka. Want me to go down the list about how George Lucas writes strong female characters? Want me to talk about Bo-Katan, Kreese? Want me to talk about Duchess Satine? Probably the most powerful ruler in Star Wars, because remember, the Mandalore had 10,000 star systems. That's why the Republic and the Separatists wanted Mandalore on their side. She was in control of 10,000 star systems. Okay, now I said all that just to answer your question. Yes, the Rey character is not written well because she's written as this like OP God character, and she's not written as a strong female character. She's just a whatever. Now, let me get back to the Return of the Jedi deep dive. So we know Darth Vader is now. Okay, let me bring out this point. Now, Vader is basically threatening the commander of the Death Star. He says, you better get this Death Star up and running. He says, I'm here to put you back on schedule. And he said, yo, man, he didn't say it like this. He said, the Emperor will not be as nice to you as I'm being, which is like irony because Vader was killing people left and right. Then the Empire Strikes Back. So what happens when the Emperor arrives? Vader says, the Death Star will be completed on time. And Palpatine bypasses it. The Emperor's like, you've done well, Lord Vader. So what does that tell you right there? Vader's conflict with Luke started in The Empire Strikes Back, and he was carrying it into Return of the Jedi by lashing out. In psychology, it's called deflection. He's deflecting his internal conflict on his subordinates, on the commander. He's like, get this up and running. By the time the Emperor gets there, he said, oh, everything's fine. And then the Emperor says, he like looks up because he's walking, he's old. The Emperor was supposed to be 100 years old in Return of the Jedi. He's walking, then he goes, and now I sense you wish to continue your search for young Skywalker. And Vader looks over like, you found me out. Like, Palpatine just unraveled all of Vader's bravado in the beginning. He's like, I don't care about the Death Star. He says, Palpatine says, you're more concerned about Luke Skywalker than the Death Star. That's basically what he's saying. He says, you wish to continue your search for young Skywalker. And the conversation goes from the Death Star, because the Vader wanted to put all his attention on other things instead of his conflict about Luke. And Emperor says, okay, you capping. That's slang. He's like, you capping right now, Vader. You really want Luke. And he's like, yeah, I do. And Emperor's like, patience, my friend. Because the Vader's hasty. He's conflicted. And Emperor senses this. He's like, patience, my friend. In time, he didn't say immediately. He didn't say now that we got the Death Star up and running, he's coming. He says, in time, he will seek you out. And when he does, whenever, that's basically what the Emperor is saying, and when he does, you must bring him before me. So he's putting it in Vader's court. He said, you're conflicted. Let's see if you can follow through with the plan. He says, in time, Luke will seek you out. When he does, whenever, you must bring him before me. He says he's strong. Only together, you and me, Vader, can we turn him to the dark side of the Force. Okay? And then Vader says, as you wish. And the Emperor is so unforgiving to the commander and so concerned about the status of the Death Star, he says, everything is proceeding as I have foreseen. And he laughs the most wicked laugh since the Wicked Witch and the Wizard of Oz. That laugh that echoes throughout that hangar, I'm sure every stormtrooper there was probably like, what have we signed up for? Or what were we forced into? The Emperor is gleeful that everything is proceeding as he's already seen. Vader tried deflecting on the commander the status of the Death Star, trying to make the commander think that the Emperor was upset with him. When it's Vader that's conflicted. Like I'll put that spin on things? Or enlightened you? Okay, but anyway, whatever. You guys probably already thought that. Or probably already saw through his bluster. You know, with, hey, the Emperor is not as forgiving as I am. Okay? And it's great stuff, because even, like I said, the dialogue is just fantastic. He's like, the Emperor does not share your optimistic appraisal of the situation. And then the guy's like, but he asks too much. That's basically what he says. He asks the impossible. I need more men. Then perhaps you can tell him when he arrives. So Vader's painting this vengeful picture of this hideous character that'll just kill you as quickly as Vader will. And the Emperor's like, oh, everything's going according to plan. Okay. He's like walking with a cane the whole time. So he's like, everything's great. It's so great that he sends Vader away. That's how good things are on the Death Star. Again, Vader's conflicted. Or as George Lucas said about Vader, he's like C-3PO now. He's a man apart at the end of Empire Strikes Back. Right? So then, as a kid, my favorite sequence was Jabba the Hutt. So, remember Han was frozen in carbonite at the end of the Empire Strikes Back? There was no gallant rescue. Remember Leia spoiled the rescue by choking out Lando Calrissian? And then she's looking up in horror as the ship takes off. She's like, oh, Han, I could have saved you, but I was reacting in anger. This is why the Jedi are against anger. That's why the Jedi are slow to anger, okay? Because it blinds you, okay? That's a real life lesson. Be slow to anger. Remember, you heard it here on Darth Vader Unlimited. But anyway, so Luke sets up this convoluted plan to get Han out of the clutches of Jabba the Hutt. He sends the droids as a gift to Jabba. He sends Leia with Chewbacca as another gift to Jabba. I guess he was trying to just get Jabba on his high horse. Like, oh, look at all these stuff I got. I got Chewie, who I've been searching for forever. I got these new droids. Yay! So then I guess he expected Jabba the Hutt to throw a big party and a huge soiree and get drunk and fall asleep. And Leia, in the form of Bausch, the bounty hunter, was going to unfreeze Han Solo in the loudest sequence in the movie while everybody's asleep and the lights are out. So even if everybody was drunk, they would have heard that. Boom! And then when Han awakes, he's like shivering loudly. And her voice is booming, even though she's trying to whisper, you have to relax for a moment. You're free of the carbonite. Where am I? Shh. Jabba's pal. So, terrible rescue attempt. Jabba sensed something was afoot, and he was hiding behind the curtain. He had all his goons hiding behind the other curtain. Jabba's wise. I don't know why Yoda wasn't this wise to pick up on the behaviors of humans. Anyway, let me get off of Yoda and the way that the Jedi are written in the prequel trilogy. So, Reese, the three-eyed, I think they're a Gran, a G-R-A-N. He's like covering 3PO's mouth because he knows he's going to say something. So by the time the curtain's over, he's like holding 3PO's mouth. 3PO's trying to say something. That's when Jabba takes Leia out of that Bausch uniform and puts her in her famous bikini. Okay. Sexual objectification, perhaps, but gorgeous. And there are a lot of women cosplaying as Leia in that bikini now. As a kid, I don't think I was just on that frequency because I was only 6. So just like, oh, she's in a bikini now. No, I'm so busy looking at Jabba. Like, oh, he's cool. Scantily clad woman. You know what I mean? But okay, now as I got older, someone pointed out to me that Ula, the first slave girl of Jabba the Hutt, had a wardrobe malfunction. And you parents, you can feel free to share this with your children or not. But she has a wardrobe malfunction, and I'm gonna keep moving. Okay. So then Luke himself shows up. Maybe Luke should have showed up in the first place and just had a whole, the rescue from, Mandalorian, the season 2 season finale. Maybe you should just go in and just cut everybody down. All right. He would have the right. His friend was in prison, maybe. Or maybe he would have turned to the dark side had he done that. Maybe that's why he didn't do that. Okay, so Luke comes in. He's like in a cloak. It's kind of like how the Emperor shows up in a hooded robe. He kind of chokes off the Gamorrean guards. I don't think he killed the Gamorrean guards, but he's like, get out of my way. They're like, had little axes in front of him. He's like, so he's brought before Jabba the Hutt. Jabba is immune to his Jedi mind tricks. So Luke says, all right, I'm going to kill this fat slug. Give me that gun. And Jabba hits the button before Luke can move. Bosca. And we see a fantastic sequence with Luke versus the Rancor. The Rancor is in stop motion, but it's done very well. This stop motion is spotless. It's almost seamless. Almost. But it ages well, the Rancor. All right. Luke kills the Rancor. Jabba the Hutt says, all right, I've had enough of this. I'm going to execute all of you. Even Chewbacca, who I just paid a bounty for. Even Han Solo, who I just paid a huge bounty for. And Vader paid a huge... he paid Boba Fett a whole bunch of money, too. So Boba Fett, I don't know why he was bounty hunting at this point. He had the money from Vader and the money from Jabba the Hutt. But anyway, so Jabba's like, all of you are going to die now in the Sarlacc. We see the tremendous sequence. Luke getting his new lightsaber. It's green. Okay, we only see blue lightsabers and red lightsabers in the previous 2 movies. So this is a fantastic sequence. Luke obviously is not invulnerable. He's not perfect. He gets shot in his hand. He goes, ah! Then just cuts the guy down. All right. And he saves the day. All right. Lando Calrissian, he infiltrated Jabba the Hutt's palace, I think, a year prior. So he was already entrenched. He was already in position. When Luke came the first time, like Luke looks over and Lando's I don't know exactly what that plan was, but Lando kind of moves into position. And then when Luke drops into the Rancor pit, Leia's looking on the hard and he like touches her, I think he touched her hand or her leg, and she looks up and he goes, and she's like, oh, it's Lando. So while the throne room's moving and Lando's kind of moving out the way, she's still looking at Lando like, this is where you are. Okay? 'Cause I guess she didn't know he was there. Okay? So we see that Luke I think Luke came up with this plan, or maybe Leia came up with this plan. The bottom line is they were able to rescue Han Solo from the clutches of the vile gangster Jabba the Hutt. Leia got the kill on Jabba the Hutt. Leia. She strangled him to death. And I think George Lucas said that he likened Jabba the Hutt's death to Luca Brassi's from his friend Francis Ford Coppola, who directed the Godfather movie when Luca Brasi was strangled to death. You see Jabba the Hutt's tongue going back and forth, and Luca Brasi kind of has that same look on his face. All right, so that was just a little nugget. So then we see the arrival of the Emperor. I kind of already talked about that. Luke goes to Dagobah with the mindset, the idea of completing his training. But Yoda is very aged, he's very frail, and he's close to death. He tells Luke this. He says, sick have I become, old and weak. And Luke's kind of like, and Yoda says, when 900 years old, you reach look as good you will not. So Yoda is still a lovable character. He's joking on his way to his deathbed. The writing of the original trilogy is so good to me for the characters. I just love it so much. And Yoda is one of my favorite characters. Okay, so he gets in his bed soon. So basically, Yoda stayed alive long enough for Luke to get there. All right. Soon will I rest. Yes. Forever sleep. Or did I? So Luke is reading his body language and hearing it. He's like, Master Yoda, you can't die. And Yoda says, strong am I with the Force, but not that strong physically. So be strong with the Force, but not physically. And he goes, twilight is upon me. Because like, if Luke is Kane, I'm not going to need this anymore, Luke, because I'm not walking out of this bed. I'm dying here. He said, Twilight is upon me, and night must fall. And he tells Luke, he assures Luke, he's the teacher, he's the compassionate Yoda. That is the way of things. We all die. That's basically what he's saying. Luke, that's the way of things. Almost like this is the way. That is the way of things. The way of the Force. Okay? The physical dies and you become one with the Force. That's the cycle of the Force. Okay? So the idea of like it being out of balance in the prequels is kind of like so if the dark side is too powerful, does that mean people aren't dying? Because if the way of the Force is to die, and the dark side of the Force is like unnatural, what was the ramifications? Just like a rampant tyranny or oppression, or was there actual like the Force literally out of whack? The way they made it sound in the prequels. But anyway, let's get off of that. So Yoda gives revelations. He's still teaching, and Luke asks the question. He says, "Yoda, he comes right out? Is Darth Vader my father?" And Yoda's like, "Rest, I need." He like turns over. "Yes, rest. I'm tired." And Luke's like, "Yoda, I must know." And great acting. I mean, it's a puppet, but this is great acting. He like Yoda like sighs. He like closes his eyes like, "Your father, he is." Spectacular direction by Richard Marquand, the late Richard Marquand, who died shortly after the Return of the Jedi. "Your father, he is." And Luke's just like, Luke already knew it was true though, because when Vader told him, he believed him right away. Because when Vader tried to communicate, well, no, he didn't try it. When he communicated telepathically with Luke, he gets Luke, and Luke sits up and goes, "Father." So Luke believed him. He believed Vader. He just needed this as confirmation. Okay. And Yoda says, "He told you that?" And Luke is like, "Yeah." And Yoda's befuddled. He don't know Vader's angle. He doesn't know Vader's in conflict. He says, "This is unexpected. And it's unfortunate." And Luke's like, "Unfortunate that I know the truth." And Yoda goes, "No, it's not unfortunate that you know the truth." He says, "It's unfortunate that you rushed to face him. Your training was incomplete." He said, "And you weren't ready for the burden of knowing this." But I think Yoda was surprised that Vader would like basically reach back into his Anakin Skywalker bag and acknowledge that he's the father of Luke. From Yoda and probably the Jedi's point of view, when the Sith stopped being, well, when the Dark Jedi stopped becoming Jedi, they forsake that life. You know what I mean? So it's like they forsake all attachment. So for Vader to still have this attachment and acknowledge that he's Luke's father, Yoda's like, "He told you?" Basically, he said, "Told you, did he?" And Luke's like, "Yes." He's like, "Unexpected. I didn't expect this," basically, Yoda says. So let you know that Yoda wasn't super powerful OP either. All right? So then Yoda, turns back over and lets him know, like, "Yo, man, if you'd have completed your training and all this other stuff, who knows what the ramifications would have been." All right? So Luke apologizes, and Yoda assures him as a compassionate teacher again. He said, "Remember." So he goes back into his old lessons. These are things that he told Luke in Empire Strikes Back. A Jedi's strength flows from the Force. The Jedi don't wrangle the Force and get it to do what they wanted to do. A Jedi's strength, everything that he is, it flows from the Force. So basically, the Jedi fulfill the will of the Force as it flows through them. He says the Jedi strength flows from the Force. And beware. It's always there, even for Yoda. Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side are they. So he says beware, because it can affect anybody. It can affect Yoda too. We know about this in the Clone Wars Season 6, where Yoda faces like an apparition. No, not an apparition. An effigy, basically, of himself. Dark Yoda. It's scary too, right? So he says everywhere. And beware. Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force are they. Once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. And then he warns Luke, do not underestimate the powers of the Emperor, or you'll turn to the dark side. That's basically what he's saying. He said, or suffer your father's fate, you will. He says, you'll turn to the dark side if you underestimate the Emperor. And that's what I really wanted to see in Anakin Skywalker becoming Vader. It's it's what powers did Vader underestimate of the Emperor? Like, why did Vader just assume that just turning to the dark, well, just following down a certain path would lead to what Vader really wanted? Like, what did Vader really want? We don't know. I mean, but again, they went back and rewrote the story as to how he turned to the dark side. But I really would have liked to have seen how Vader really would have turned to the dark side. Not about keeping people alive or about a wife or being denied a promotion to almost a general manager, but Jedi Master, okay? So he warns Luke, the Emperor's powerful. All right. And we learned that the Emperor is powerful at the end of this movie, which we'll get into shortly because I'm a little over the hour mark. I usually like to make these live streams short and concise. So as Yoda's dying, he tells Luke. Now, when I was younger, I never picked up on what he was saying. He says, "There's another Skywalker." And he dies and disappears, which is beautiful. And the music, too, fantastic. And the part that always gets me to this day, when Luke walks back to the X-Wing with R2, he looks back at the hut and the fire goes out. That's the part that gets me. It's like, oh man, he's really gone. You know what I mean? Like the hut is dark now. There's no light left. There's no life left in that hut. You know what I mean? And it's kind of just like a discourse on life in real life. You know what I mean? It's like when the light goes out of a person, like there's nothing there. I'll get a little personal here. It's like when somebody that I love, they were old. They were 97 when they passed. Right? It's like as soon as I saw, because we didn't see them die like Luke saw Yoda die, but we got the call that they died. So when we came to the hospital, it's like the light was out. You know what I mean? It's like this isn't even this person anymore. You know what I mean? It's like this is a shell. It's like I don't even, and I hope I'm being transparent here, but I don't remember having any kind of affinity for this shell because that person was no longer there. You know what I mean? So like watching the light go out in the hut, that always gets me. I'm like, so Yoda was really gone. You know what I mean? So there's no glimmer of hope. You know, the fire's out. It's done. All right. So then Luke has a talk with Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan reveals for the first time in the trilogy who Darth Vader was before he became Darth Vader. He says we get a name, Anakin Skywalker. That's the first time we hear that. And Obi-Wan says he ceased to be Anakin Skywalker and became Darth Vader. So that goes back to Yoda being surprised that Vader would acknowledge he was Luke's father, because that's him acknowledging that he was Anakin Skywalker. Okay? So then we get another revelation of what Yoda said when he died. He said, "There's another Skywalker." And Obi-Wan says, and he said it like kind of like, "Oh, the other spoke was a twin sister," as if Luke was supposed to know that person existed. He's like, "But I have no sister." And Obi-Wan's like, "To protect you both from the Emperor, you were hidden from your father when you were born." So again, prequels, original trilogy, they don't line up at times. He says, "You were hidden from your father when you were born." He said, "The Emperor knew as I did, if Anakin were to have any offspring, they would be a threat to him. That is the reason why your sister remained safely anonymous." Originally, Princess Leia was not supposed to be Luke's twin sister. It was supposed to be somebody else. And at the end of Return of the Jedi, when Princess Leia becomes queen, okay, Luke was supposed to take off in search of his twin sister. Okay? And I think that's from a storyboard or a story note. Okay, but we know the direction they went. Princess Leia is his twin sister. Okay? And Obi-Wan, he concludes with, "Bury your feelings deep down, Luke." He says, "They do you credit, but they could be made to serve the Emperor." That's why the Emperor and the dark side is always about your feelings. It's like, what impulse is there? Act on that impulse. Act on that hatred. Act on that rage. Even in Empire Strikes Back, Vader's like, he said, "Release your anger. In other words, your anger isn't enough. Only your hatred can destroy me." So anger isn't enough to beat me. That's basically what Vader was saying in Cloud City. He says, you have to hate me. Act on that hate. That's why the dark side is evil. The dark side is evil. Okay? So then Luke reunites with the rest of the Millennium Falcon and the rebels. They talk about their plan to attack the Death Star. The Emperor sends Vader away from the Death Star. So the idea of him not being happy with the status of the Death Star, baloney by you, Darth. He said, "All right." Wait a minute, I'm trying to think of the line before he sent them away. Oh, he says, talks about Luke. He gives a final thing about Luke. He said, no, because Vader is hasty again. He said, what is your bidding, my master? He says, send the fleet to the far side of Endor. There we'll stay until called for. And Vader's like, but what about the reports of the Rebel Alliance? What are the reports? The Rebel fleet massing their Solus. And Emperor's like, it is of no concern. Soon the rebellion will be crushed and young Skywalker will be one of us. So let's assuage your fears, Darth. I'm on board with the plan. The rebellion will be crushed. Young Skywalker will be one of us. Everything's fine here. Your work is finished, my friend. Go out to the command ship and await my orders. So he's not even specifically telling Vader why you're going to the command ship. He says, await my orders. Be patient, Darth. That's what the Emperor's trying to tell him. This is why I would have loved to have seen lessons from the Emperor to Vader, because the Emperor is almost like Yoda. He's like, patient, Darth. Be patient. That's what Yoda was saying to Luke. Patience. That's what Obi-Wan is saying to Luke. Patience. So we see that Luke is a spitting image of his father. And the Emperor's like, it is of no concern about the rebel fleet massing their Solus, because the Emperor already has a plan. He says, your work, he said, soon the rebellion will be crushed. That make you feel better, Darth? And young Skywalker, which you really care about, will be one of us. Yay! Your work here is finished. We're fine. The commander is fine. I'm not going to kill anybody. We're going according to plan. Go out to the command ship. Basically, get out of here because you're hasty about Luke. You're hasty. I got plans. You might mess them up. Go. Get out of here. And Vader's like, yes, my master. And leaves. He's obedient to the Emperor. So, again, well, not again. Okay, I just say that maybe instinctively or impulsively. So the plan of the rebellion, they discovered where the Death Star is located geographically in the galaxy. It's orbiting the farthest moon of Endor. Okay, so they have a location. The plan is they discovered that the Death Star has a shield generator on Endor. Okay, so the plan is to destroy the shield generator. So you have to sneak past the Imperial shield. Okay. In a stolen Tidarium, shuttle Tidarium, that's the name of it. In a Lambda-class shuttle. So the crew of the Millennium Falcon, with the exception of Lando Calrissian, because he's now leading the Alliance attack against the Death Star, the plan is to sneak into the base, blow it up, so the fleet can come and destroy the Death Star. That's the plan. So on the shuttle's way to Endor, Han gives the code. Vader's, looking out of the view screen because he was sent there by the Emperor. Okay? So had he disobeyed or whatever, he might have, not realized that Luke was on Endor. Okay? So Vader, Vader's always looking out of the screen. You know what I mean? Out of the view screen. So then he walks down the ramp. He says, and the intonation in his voice is different. He's like, where's that shuttle going? So then Admiral Piet, formerly Captain Piet, says, Shuttle Tidarium, what is your cargo and destination? Parts and technical group for the farthest moon. So Piet looks up at Vader like, okay. And Vader's like, do they have a code clearance? And Piet's like, it's an older code, sir, but it checks out. Hasty. Well, maybe not hasty, but it's like, Vader's like, what's going on here? What about that shuttle? Where are they going? Do they have a code clearance? And Admiral P is like, it's an older code, but it checks out. I was about to clear them. so basically he's like, I was going to continue with my job. That's good. You know what I mean? And Vader looks off, and Luke, and I remember before Vader even asked these questions, Luke sensed Vader's presence. He's like, Vader's on that ship. And then Luke's like, I'm endangering the mission. I shouldn't have come. Because now they feel the connection of one another. And Luke's like, I should not have come here because Vader can sense that I'm here. He knows that we're not who we say we are on the shuttle. And Han's like, it's your imagination, kid. Like, can we be a little optimistic? So Vader's like glaring at the shuttle. Well, maybe not technically at the shuttle, but he's just like looking off. Admiral P is like, should I hold them? Because Vader's looking off and Vader's like, nah, leave them to me. I will deal with them myself. And Admiral P has no idea what he's talking about. He's like, as you wish, my lord. Carry on. You know what I mean? He's like, okay, let's get back to work. So they open the shield. The shuttle lands. We have a terrific speeder bike chase. That's the first time we've ever seen a speeder bike in Star Wars. It's like the trees are just coming at you, watching as the audience like shoo, shoo, shoo. I remember always like being riveted by that sequence when I saw it in theaters as a kid. Like, I was like, yeah, we on board with this. You know what I mean? So Vader leaves. He goes back to the Death Star to report on what he learned. And when he gets there, now in the books, it really like points this out. But like when the Emperor's like looking off and Vader's like standing there, and you can tell like Vader's like content to wait. He's like, it says that it was a while. And then the Emperor's like, I told you to remain on the command ship. And Vader says a small rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor. And the Emperor's like, when the Emperor turns around and says, yes, I know. So he came all this way. You didn't follow orders just to tell me something I already know. And Vader hits him. He says, my son is with them. And the Emperor's like, are you sure? And Vader's like, I felt him, my master. So there's this connection, okay, with Luke and Vader. And the Emperor's like, now remember, the Emperor has this power to see things before they happen. He's like, and he can, connect all these minds of the Empire. All right, we learned that through Heir to the Empire. Okay. And he's like, strange that I am not. He leans forward and goes, I wonder if your feelings on this matter are clear, Lord Vader. And Vader assures him, he says, they are clear, my master. And the Emperor's like, then go to Endor and wait for him. And Vader's shocked by this. He's like, he will come to me. And the Emperor is so glad that Vader doesn't know. He sits back and goes, I have foreseen it. He's so overconfident. You know what I mean? He's like, I have foreseen it. He didn't see everything. He says his compassion for you will be his undoing. And then he sucks his teeth. He will come to you, and his head is cocked to the side. He will come to you, and then you will bring him before me, which we already talked about. When he first arrived, he said, he'll seek you out. And when he does, you will bring him before me. So that's why he's like, we already talked about this, Darth. He's going to come to you. The Emperor just didn't know that Luke had arrived already. So things are happening quicker than the Emperor expected with Luke. But it still falls into his plan, okay? And I apologize, I am going a little longer, but we're going to keep on going, okay? Comment, please. Leave a like, heart, whatever. Okay. So again, the speeder bike chase. Leia disappears. She's in the Ewok village. We're introduced to these little bears that a lot of people don't like for some reason. Like, how could you not like these Ewoks? They're cute. They're cuddly. All right. They're a lot more menacing than we give them credit for because they were going to cook and fricassee Han Solo and feed him to the entire Ewok village in honor of C-3PO that they saw as a god because they're primitive. But these were savage creatures, the Ewoks. Okay? They were going to kill Han and eat him. And he says, you're going to be the main course. So Luke and Chewie would probably be on deck next. Can you imagine having to kill Chewie and skin him? And you know how you like skin a deer? I actually skinned a dead deer. Obviously, it was already dead when I was at the school I used to go to. Like this big old slab. You'd like, oh, sorry about that. Okay, let's not get into details about that. But anyway, let's not talk about skinning and eating Chewie. So Luke demonstrates his power using the Force. He levitates C-3PO. So now the Ewoks are on the side of the rebellion. All right. So again, I don't want to belabor the video any more than I already have. We get to the good stuff. Now that I'm grown up, I think it's the good stuff. Luke surrenders, and Vader, almost as soon as Vader lands, Luke is brought before him almost immediately. So the timing is just like perfect. So Vader's like glaring at Luke. Maybe he's surprised that Luke actually showed up. Because again, he's almost like, while the commander's talking, he's like, oh, you got something for me, a lightsaber. So they're talking. You can tell Luke is getting to Vader because Luke's not being aggressive. He's like, he used to be Anakin. And Vader's like, don't you ever, ever use that name when referring to me. And Luke's like, that's who you really are. You've only forgotten. I know there's good in you. He said, the Emperor hasn't driven it all out of you. And Vader's stuck. Vader ain't got no words for him. Like, Vader didn't go, do you know how many Jedi I cut down, Luke? You can't tell me that. But Vader knows he's telling the truth. So Vader's like quiet. He's like, maybe Vader's being patient this time. So then Luke turns his back on Darth Vader. Okay? So his body language is like, okay, I trust you. I trust the good that's left in you to turn my back to you, even though I'm like the hero of the rebellion and a Jedi and you're a Sith. So he says, that's why you couldn't destroy me. That's why you won't bring me to your emperor now. So in the books, they say that that was an attempt at a Jedi mind trick. That's why he won't bring me to your emperor now. And it had no effect on Vader. Vader, as soon as he says that, Vader looks down at his lightsaber. It's like, at Luke's lightsaber. Okay, he turns it on. That, and Luke's like, uh-oh. You know what I mean? Because he can't do nothing. He got handcuffs on. Vader could have fricasseed him if he wanted to. And the threat is there just by turning on the lightsaber. And Vader's like examining the lightsaber. He's like, I see you constructed a new lightsaber. And it's like, he like waves it around a little bit. And Luke's like, then he turns it off. So he lets Luke know, I could have got you there, kid. And there'd be no talk to the Emperor. You'd just be dead. Then Vader turns his back. And he says, indeed, you are powerful, as the Emperor has already foreseen. So hearing that, Luke's like, so if you know I'm powerful, he's like, because Luke turns back to Vader, he's like, come with me. So basically, Luke is doing what Vader did to him in Empire Strikes Back. Vader's like, come with me, and we can join the dark side and take over the galaxy. And now Luke is like, come with me to the light side. And you can tell by Vader's body language that he's so conflicted just by his body language. And you can't see the actor, which is amazing acting by David Prowse. You can't see his face, but you can read in his body language that he's conflicted. He's like, and he recalls, Obi-Wan once thought as you do. You don't, then he says, you don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master. Even saying that, there's still conflict with Vader, but there's still the truth. There's still the conviction that he has to even be on the dark side. It's still real with Vader. Remember, he's not totally sold to the light. He still wants to be on the dark side. And Luke was like, he says, I won't turn. He said, you'll be forced to kill me. And I guess Vader just had enough of the games or whatever. He's like, if that's your destiny, I'll kill you. It looks like he's telling Vader, search your feelings now. He says, you can't do this. I feel the conflict within you. Let go of your hate. So Vader's still holding on to hate. This is why he's a conflicted character. He's 100% hateful, 100% evil, yet he's leaning towards the light, but he's trying to stay on the dark side. Okay. And then we hear like almost a moment of clarity from Anakin Skywalker from within the armor. He goes, it is too late for me, son. Like that, you just feel that line. James Earl Jones delivered that with just such, it is. And it's almost a stutter. It's almost like he didn't want to say that. He's like, it is too late for me, son. In other words, he's saying there's no redemption for me because of the terrible things I've done. And then Vader's had enough. He's like, all right, I can't take this. He goes, the Emperor will show you. So he's Vader again because the stormtroopers are coming. The Emperor will show you the true nature of the Force. He is your master now. It looks like, okay. Then my father's truly dead. And Vader is stunned again and decide like Vader, like Luke based him basically. And Vader had nothing to say. And Vader, you can tell Vader was hurt. Even in the armor, this is just fantastic acting, fantastic storytelling. Like Vader, like he's like, watching Luke be escorted down the hall, and Vader's looking on. Then when the door closes, he's like, walks over to the railing. He's like everything in this means something. A slow walk, leaning his arm on the railing, and that conflict is just so palpable. Okay, so then Luke is brought before the Emperor. We see the power of the Emperor. We see how much Luke and Darth Vader fear his power. Like Luke's like trying to buck up against the Emperor, and Vader's like, whoa, son, like, hey, stop that, stop, behave. He can kill you. He's like, you're gravely mistaken. He's like, Luke, how dare you? You won't confront me like you did my father. And the Emperor is just so wicked, so evil, that Luke is like afraid of this guy, almost. I think he's almost afraid of the Emperor. You can tell by his body language, like the Emperor says things and Luke's like, he's like, your friends up there on the Endor moon. And Luke's like, oh God, he knows about them. You know what I mean? And what else did he say? He said something else. Oh, right. He said, perhaps you refer to your imminent attack of the rebel fleet. And Luke's like, and the Emperor just eating this up. He's like, yes. He's watching Luke. I assure you, we are quite safe from your friends here. And he says, your overconfidence is your weakness. And the Emperor turns around and bases him and shuts Luke up. Your faith in your friends is yours. Ha. So we just see that the Emperor is just a really, he's like savage verbally. And Ian McDiarmid is the best actor in the Star Wars saga, period. So then the battle commences between Luke and Vader, okay? And again, Vader saves the Emperor because Vader is loyal to the Emperor. Did he want to take over? Yes. But there's the conflict there. He's a slave to the dark side. He's a slave to the Emperor. But there's still a loyalty there. So he saves the Emperor. All right? So Luke demonstrates when he taps into the dark side, he's powerful. He like kicks Vader down the steps. Vader like backflips off, like, oh, yeah. And the Emperor's just eating this up. And Luke's like, man, I gave in to the hate of the dark side. Because the Emperor's like coaching him. Like, go ahead, give it to your father. So Luke deactivates his lightsaber. He says, I will not fight you. And when Luke balks, that's when the dark side is strengthened in Vader. Because Vader gets the momentum every time Luke turns off the dark side. You know, because then, like, when Vader's walking up the steps, the music, like, do, do, do. Because now Vader's a menace. Because Luke doesn't have that hatred to match Vader's hatred. So Vader goes, you are unwise to lower your defenses. So Vader's now on the attack because he's fueled by this hatred. So then Luke jumps onto that walkway. And he's still talking that Jedi garbage to Vader that Vader's fighting against. And Vader's like, there is no conflict. So Luke says this in front of the Emperor. He says, you couldn't kill me before. You hear that, Emperor? Nothing. He says, you can't destroy me now. And Vader's like, that hatred just goes up in Vader. He tosses the lightsaber. Yeah. And the whole platform falls. And Luke like falls and thankfully he wasn't injured. And it's so just, the Emperor's eating it up so much that the Emperor gets up out of his seat and is just laughing. Like, we got a show now. And Vader walking down the steps, he hit the Emperor like, good. Because he can sense that the conflict in Vader. He knows there's conflict with Vader. But he's evil. He's overconfident. He's like, oh, Vader will get past this. He's like, I'm setting Vader up to be replaced anyway. You know what I mean? So when Vader's walking down the steps, he's like, good. He's like, you're on board, it seems like. So then, my favorite Darth Vader sequence is when he's tempting Luke to the dark side. When they're underneath the platform, and Luke's hiding. And remember, when Luke balks to the dark side, that's when Vader's more fueled with the dark side. Because now Vader's reading his mind. He's calling him out. He's like, sister. And he's calling out Luke's, predilection towards, dropping everything to save his friends like he did in Cloud City. So then when Luke embraces the dark side, that's when it's almost like not even a match anymore. Because Luke is freely flowing through the dark side. So then he says, like, if you will not turn to the dark side, perhaps she will. Talking about twin sister, and Luke's like, no! It like screams like savagely, no! And Darth turns around like, what? And Luke almost like impales him, like fighting. Luke's just swinging like, hitting stuff. And Vader is no match because Vader's conflicted. Luke isn't. Luke is just giving in to hate here. So Vader's conflict is no match for Luke's hatred. Okay. So Luke basically embraces the dark side in this moment. All right. He's like fighting. He like swings at Vader. Vader ducks under. It's like kind of like holding onto the railing, just holding up his lightsaber. Luke's like, and he okay, maybe I'm being a little dramatic. But he just chops off Vader's hand when he could have chopped his head off. He's like, and Vader falls, and Luke is holding the blade to his throat. And the Emperor is just eating all this up, just laughing. He like claps his hands, good. And the Emperor drops the bomb. He says, wait a minute, I want to quote him in this. He's like, your hate has made you powerful. Now fulfill your destiny and take your father's place at my side. So safe dialogue. Instead of, go ahead and kill him. Go ahead and kill your father. The dialogue is safe because you know what he means. He says, fulfill your destiny and take your father's place. And then while Luke is holding the blades of Vader's throat, he looks at his right hand, which is artificial, and he like balls it up. He's like, "This isn't real. This hand is not real." Then he looks down and sees that Vader had an artificial hand as well, and it hits him. When you embrace the dark side, it takes away all of your humanity. Because remember, Obi-Wan told Luke earlier on Dagobah, he said he's more machine than man. That's what the dark side does. It takes you apart. It strips you of your goodness and your humanity. So he's like, man, I already lost a hand. He said, so if I give in to the dark side, I'll lose even more, just as my father has lost almost everything. Almost everything. But the only humanity left in Vader is what saved Luke's life in Empire Strikes Back, because Vader showed that compassion. Okay? So then Luke, he turns off the blind rage. He didn't give in to the dark side like Anakin Skywalker did. He deactivates the saber. So he didn't want revenge like Palpatine said that Anakin wanted for the same people killing his mom. Or from Dooku cutting his arm off. And he already cut Dooku's hands off. Whatever. So he didn't give in to the revenge. So the Emperor's like befuddled. And Luke throws the lightsaber away. I don't need this. He's done. I'm not going to kill a disarmed man like my father did. Retroactively, of course. So then the Emperor's like, okay. So be it. You're a Jedi. I'm a Sith. Jedi must die. So then we just see the Force lightning out of... I just remember just being shocked as a kid. I was like, oh my God. The Emperor is powerful. He's just using Force lightning. I think he had the pinky up. He was like... And the theater would like gasp, like, oh my God, this man can do this? And of course the Emperor's still talking like, young fool. Only now do you realize the power of the dark side and your mistakes. He just... And Vader gets up. He's like, he has that different wheeze, because his system is damaged. His hand's not there, so the system is no longer fully intact. You know what I mean? Because the hand's gone. So it's like that that labored breathing. I'm gonna press the button so you can hear it for yourself on the mask. Oh wait, no, I gotta detach this part. Not this breathing, but this breathing. Alright, so I'm gonna detach this part. And then when I hit the button, you hear that wheeze. Pretty cool. All right. I like that Black Series helmet. So Vader's wheezing. Vader is back at the Emperor's side. He's almost in the shadow of the Emperor from the way it's filmed, even though he's like massive compared to the Emperor. And then we see some other great stuff. Great nonverbal acting by David Prowse. Vader's looking at Luke be tortured. It almost looks like he's like cheering. He's almost like this, but that's just his reeling from hardly being able to breathe. It's like, and then he like looks at the Emperor, and the Emperor's like, "Now, young Skywalker." He says, "You will die," and Vader knows he has the power to do it because Luke can't fight back here. So then, he starts like, you just hear Luke like, "Father, please." And Vader's looking back and forth. And they show the Emperor like, and he sees Luke. Then Luke stops making noise because Luke's about to die. He's like, oh! And then Vader springs into action with one hand. Okay, one hand intact. I'm sorry, the left hand was intact, and an exposed circuitry and wiring. He plugs that right into the Emperor's back. That's why the injury was nothing he could do against, because he's exposed, tapping it, and he puts it right on the back of the Emperor. So there's no hand there. There's no insulation there. All that stuff is exposed, and he's getting hit. He's getting hit in his head. You see like his skull. That's crazy stuff. He picks up the Emperor, throws him down the reactor shaft, and the Emperor is destroyed. Okay, that's why the Emperor's Return and the Rise of Skywalker is so egregious to us original trilogy fans. The death of the Emperor signals the end of the Empire. The rebellion, the plan goes into fruition. The plan is enacted. The shield is destroyed. Lando Calrissian leads the charge. He destroys the Death Star's main reactor. It collapses in on itself, and the flight through the Death Star is way more intense. You know, before it's just that big trench, that big open space, but now they gotta like go through like looks like a bunch of like insulation and stuff like that. But the special effects, as I said, they hold up to the day, 40 plus years later. Okay, then at the end, we see that very emotional scene of Luke burning the armor. Well, I'm sorry, the body of Vader. It's the first time we saw a funeral pyre in Star Wars, and we see that this old school method, this ancient method of burning the dead in human history, is in Star Wars. It's the traditional way of the Jedi, I guess, commemorating the dead. I guess so. Luke burns Vader. You see the armor. See that moving music. You know, he saved his father. You know, that's awesome stuff. And at the end, while the Ewoks are celebrating with the rebellion, Luke walks off by himself and he sees three Force ghosts, three people he lost, three father figures. Okay, one was his literal father. Okay, he sees Obi-Wan. He sees Yoda sitting on something somehow, and he's a Force ghost. Then the ghost of Anakin Skywalker appeared, who's played by the late actor Sebastian Shaw. Same name as Sebastian Shaw from the X-Men, the Hellfire Club, the name. But the actor's real name is Sebastian Shaw. And Luke is just like, I think Luke is the only one that can see him. He's like leaning up against the post, like, this is awesome. Leia comes over. She's like, come on, Luke, let's go back. And Luke doesn't turn away, but he's like, still looking. He's like, all right, you guys, I know you're with me. And it ends beautifully. This ties the original trilogy together. It ends the original trilogy. No loose ends. Vader is saved. The Emperor is destroyed. The Empire falls. The rebellion is free now from the tyranny of the galaxy of the Emperor. And The Return of the Jedi was just my favorite movie as a child. It's still one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. This is Star Wars at its peak, the original trilogy, in my opinion. Okay, a lot of people think Revenge of the Sith is the peak of Star Wars. That's fine. Let's talk about it. We will when we do the deep dive into the Revenge of the Sith. Okay, but next on the list, as far as deep dives on another live stream, okay, will be The Rise of Skywalker, the final movie of the sequel trilogy. All right, I'll give you my thoughts on that movie. But this has been Return of the Jedi. This has been an awesome live stream. I love talking about Star Wars. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you guys thumb up the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, okay, so the channel can grow and spread across the galaxy. And may the Force be with you.